Welcome to The Lounge. I'm Matt with Fultner Woodworking and your host of the Maker Lounge podcast, where we have a rotating group of makers hanging out and talking shop with each other. His wife told him he needed a hobby, which I know from experience is wife code for we need new furniture. From steam bending to complex joinery, I've never seen someone make complicated builds look so easy. I binge-watched his YouTube channel for about 6 hours and instantly doubted whether I was even a woodworker. The dad jokes in his videos would make mine sound like stepdad jokes. The only guy I feel comfortable saying nice curves to is here in the lounge. Nick Sawyer with Sawyer Designs. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Nice curves.
I get that a lot. No, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. So tell me about what you build in your shop for those who aren't following you, which is probably very few at this point.
Yeah, I guess my value prop that I have landed on is bent wood, and anything from bent lamination. Recently took up some steam bending. I guess when I started, it was sort of like, what's the next hardest thing? And I just kind of didn't stop that mentality. So some crazy stuff, and yeah, anything wood and any piece of furniture you can think of. I think I've hit about everything by now.
Yeah. Yeah. You do, like I mentioned, you do some very complex builds. Your process has got to be a lot different than the average woodworker, where you outline what you're planning on doing and then you think, how can I level up my previous build?
Yeah, I would hope my process is a little bit different, because my process is super tedious and slow, and it's rewarding, but at times it is super frustrating. So, and sometimes it takes months to like land on the right combination of design options and different configurations to make sure that what I'm going to end up with is something that I won't read in the comments how it is for the next lifetime.
Do you find that you come up with an idea and then you marinate on it and then it evolves before you even start cutting wood?
So typically, I guess the way that I work best in an ideal world is I think about something, I draw it on paper, and my drawing skills are pretty crap. So, and it's just like a laborious process. So I usually start with like 4 lines, and I think about how those lines are like living together, and I'll redraw those 4 lines and redraw them until I'm like, I don't know, they just sort of like nest together correctly. And then I pull sort of that outline and that wireframe, I guess you would call it, into CAD. And I do all of my design work in there.
Okay. So you start on paper and then move it into CAD?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
More so just to get, the feel for the overall structure. And like the last one I did, I think... So I thought I was done with it, and then I presented it as a final to the client, and we decided like maybe there are some more options that we need to explore. I think I ended up at like 62 different iterations of the same design.
Wow. That's crazy. So I heard you on another podcast. I'm trying to remember which one it was, but I think you had mentioned charging for your design work before you start building something or start doing that. And now I can see why. If you're doing 60 iterations of something, that is not free time.
Yeah, especially if somebody doesn't buy a piece of furniture. So now actually I do have a design time built into my pricing. I'd like to get more for that time, but at least it's there. And typically what I'll do is I'll get a deposit before I take it from paper to a computer. If I think it will be helpful in like selling the project, I will put it into CAD. But what I found is a half-assed, half-baked idea. Like my iteration 1 of anything is pretty rough, and it's just kind of get the are we on the same page? Are we headed in the right direction? Are you liking this at all? Or they're like, no, wow, that's totally opposite of what I had in mind. So yeah, iteration 1 typically is the MVP, the minimally viable product. And then I expand as we get closer. Yeah, I mean, some of them start out way different than they end. It's an interesting process, and I've found that there's just no shortcut to starting over and building it from the bottom up.
Yeah,
over and over again.
Wow. So you'll have one design iteration, put it or a couple different design iterations, and then end up in a totally different direction by the time the client's ready to move forward.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many projects are you doing in a typical year at this point?
Trying to get one big one done a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm usually staggering sort of the design process at the end, sort of after I get all the hard things done. There's a design process on the next one. So I can like sand and finish and all that tedious work. I don't have to, it doesn't occupy so much part of my brain. And I work into the next design. So yeah, I'm shooting for one big one a month. And then I also do one like small one. I finally found a format on YouTube that's been really working well. That enough cutting boards, make this instead series.
Yes, I love that. That's great. I love that.
Yeah.
If you've made one cutting board, you've made 100 cutting boards, I feel. Well, maybe
exactly.
if you've made 10 cutting boards, usually your first one's crap.
All mine have been crap.
Which is why you started this series. Like, hey, look what I can do better than a cutting board.
I think it started because I saw somebody do like 10,000 cutting boards, which honestly was pretty cool to watch.
Yeah.
But I have a hard time just like getting stoked about, okay, I need to make an 8-minute video and make this interesting.
Right.
Small stuff. As soon as I get to a part, like you've seen me sand for 2 seconds, you've seen all the sanding you need to see.
Right. I think, are you talking about Devo's, I think is his name? He started a business that he would, all of a sudden, he just out of nowhere, he made like thousands and thousands of cutting boards.
Yeah, and it seemed like it was like crowdfunded, if I remember correctly,
mm-hmm.
like pre-ordered.
Yeah. I watched that video, and because I made cutting boards. It's kind of like when I got my CNC and my laser, I was like, oh, cutting boards, perfect. And after about my 500th cutting board, I was like, I'm okay if I never make another cutting board again. So that's why I really appreciate that series that you put out. And you do that every weekly, or
I wish I had the bandwidth to do that weekly. Eventually, I need to get some editing help or something. I'm pulling on a lot of strings right now trying to get this to scale. So,
yeah. I guess the reason why it seems like weekly is because like I was chatting with you the other night, and I was like, man, I'm binge watching this stuff, and just like I got in this rabbit trail of watching those. It was very entertaining.
I think everyone on YouTube's doing some simple stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just, I feel like YouTube is all about doing you and doing it in a way that isn't just a different rendition of somebody else. It's finding something unique about it.
Yeah.
And so mine is dirty jokes.
Yeah.
Well, seems to be working well.
As it went further and further back into the channel, I noticed that those were fewer and far between. So that's been more of an evolution.
Yeah. It's been a comfort level thing too. Like staring at a camera lens and trying to pretend like you're talking to somebody and you get zero feedback.
Yeah.
I kind of feed off of those around me, and I've had a long learning curve getting YouTube up.
Yeah. So for the listeners who haven't checked that out yet, Nick's got a great series that is essentially like, instead of making a cutting board for somebody, make this other thing instead, like a knife block or a drawer sorter or something like that. And it's things like, I think one of your punchlines is, most of your cutting boards are too nice and nobody's using them or something like that to that effect. And so, yeah, they're creative, options for people instead of just getting, because if you look on Etsy, that's all you see is cutting boards. Like,
yeah. And, there's got to be, I needed a way to put out more content. And like, I just really needed something that was boiling down what my channel is and what people seem to be responding to really well, and just doing the like simplest version of that. So all of the simple ones, I'm trying to put just like something in there that has a little bit of like my flair, a little extra attention to detail that might something you can't buy off, a shelf at the store. So
yeah. Well, for example, your cabinet, your drawer sorter for your silverware, most people would have taken them over to the, the sander and sanded them down. You're like, no, this is a perfect opportunity for pulling out a hand plane or whatever.
Exactly.
Like, living dangerously. If I took a hand plane to it, I mean, I'd end up with toothpicks. So your hand tool work, your hand tool game is on point. For those of you who haven't checked out his page, Nick incorporates a lot of hand tools. Planes. How many planes would you say that you have?
10.
Okay,
that's a question. I don't. 1, 2,
10-ish,
4, 8, 10-ish.
Okay, yeah.
I really use like 3 on the day to day.
Yeah. So, what's your favorite? Chisels, hand planes? What's your favorite hand tool?
It probably would have used to have been chisels. I've cut enough dovetails. I'm over it. Dovetails.
Yeah. Well,
I'm doing pocket holes from now on.
yeah, exactly.
I don't know. A handsaw is pretty satisfying to use. I would say my favorite thing that I reach for the most is probably a block plane.
Okay. Yeah.
Or my number 4 smoother.
I'm more of a modern woodworker. So I'm more into like the, get something, because I only do this on the weekends. And so for me, I'm like, do it as fast as I can. Because like your project that you took 6 months on would have taken me 6 years.
Man, that was a push at the end. I have never spent so long thinking about something. That thing was so complicated.
So tell me about that process, that project.
So I guess when I first started woodworking, it was, I want to make something look cool. And then I found that there can be more than just like that. You can tell a story through a project, and maybe that story, speaks to something gained, or celebrate something gained, like speaks to something lost, or kind of just takes you on a journey. And so that one, I really sat down. I was like, okay, if I am ever going to like scale the educational portion of this media side, I really need to come up with some like strict framework for which I can build courses like about design and like everything that leads up to the video about. So I just sat down and I was like, okay, how the hell does my brain work? And I was like, okay, so the bedroom, dresser, bedroom, I'm thinking like our bedroom's sort of like dark and like moody. All right, dark and moody. Like, what do I think of? Like ocean, waves, bedroom, like sexy, sultry. And I landed on a shark. And
hey, save some of that for the after show.
I will do that. So yeah, I don't know. I just kind of like took it on. I made this just brain tree of stuff I was thinking of, and I landed on a design. And I typically try to separate out the design portion and the execution portion, which has continually bit me in the um, but it ends up with some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
And figuring out how to get curves on curves at that scale. The thing ended up at 7 foot. I'll drop you some pictures or something. Maybe you can overlay them here.
Yeah, that'd be great. So it was inspired by a blue shark, right? This dresser that you're talking about.
Yep.
And the thing I love about that build was, you're kind of midway through the project and you're like, oh, yeah. Speaking of the curves, you're like, oh, now this curve is a complex curve that I'm sure you had thought about it, but it was like, now it comes to the execution portion of it. Like, how do I accomplish this 14.2 degree curve or something, obscure.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about it is that you show that process, like kind of what's happening in your head, because it brings the humanity to the channel that you don't get on a lot of channels. So as a viewer, I appreciate that because it makes me feel, like I said in the intro, I said after watching your channel, I thought, am I even a woodworker? Like,
yeah, it seems like everyone can relate to that like struggle. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, most people, when they get into a build, if they've drawn it out on, SketchUp or something like that, or hand drawn it, and most people are not doing the complex builds like you're doing. It's, square corners, it's 90s, it's 45s, sometimes 60s or something like that. But I think you tend to challenge yourself. At least what I saw in the evolution of watching your stuff, and I watched it backwards. I watched your most current stuff, and then started going back, and I could see the reverse of what your evolution was. As you're thinking about your next project that's coming up, you're building on all the other things that you've learned. Are you building in margin and time for those challenges, those changes coming up?
I don't worry about time.
Okay.
It takes as long as it's going to take. I'd rather build a portfolio that represents the best of my ability at the moment that I built it, rather than the trade of and compromise of my time. So I almost never bill for time. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the execution part takes not as much time as I think it's going to. The like consideration and like every aspect, I could probably solve some of this in CAD, spending more time in the design portion. But I usually get to a certain place where it's like, okay, this is going to depend on the step before. And like, I don't know how that's going to end up. So it does me no good to spend a ton of time in CAD and like perfect it here, because once you translate some of this, especially I don't have a CNC, so I'm cutting all my curves and fairing them by hand. At a certain point, I can just throw my plans or my drawings away, and I just sort of wing it from there.
Yeah. So you got involved in steam bending. You were doing like bent lamination and stuff kind of early on, I think. And then
I just did one with steam. Yeah.
Okay. So compare the two. Do you prefer just the bent lamination?
I don't know. So steam bending seems, there are some cool parts about it that I enjoy. Such like you can carve into it and you're not exposing those layers, those glue lines. It's a little more freeform. It's kind of like chair making. Chair making, in my opinion, is sort of like, I don't know, like you could be stoned and make a chair. Where
that'd be an interesting chair. I've tried making chairs, FYI. It didn't go so well.
I've done one. Okay. Well, I guess two. But yeah, there's a looseness about it. Like you can just sort of like, there's like a by hand and by eye, that whole thing. Where bent lamination is like it speaks to the anal retentive, OCD, Adderall guzzling motherfucker inside of me. Ding.
Yeah, I'm prepared for you.
And if you want it to look like you put it in CAD and you want everything to be precisely how you intend it to be, then bent lamb.
Okay.
If there's some margin for like this curve can be whatever it ends up at, cool, steam bent. Also, I don't know, like I can see the appeal in steam bending too, but it takes the same setup as far as like a bending structure. It takes a hell of a lot more like force and different setup to bend around that structure. Then you have to leave it on like a cooling form for it to come back to level relative humidity with the shop. So I find it a lot slower of a process. Bent lamb is a crap ton more work.
Just got to keep my finger on that button.
I'm trying.
No, you're good. I know you can see it boiling up and you're like, just say it. Be you.
Yeah.
You're fine. More time in post edit for me. I'll be at Workbench Con. I got nothing to do.
I've had a lot of fun, like figuring out fun ways to cover up different. Did you get back far enough to get to the vinyl bag and opening thing that people love?
I've seen your most recent ones, and I probably 8 or 10 videos back, maybe something like that, where you've
probably seen some vinyl bag.
Yeah. Where you started to say, oh, that just doesn't sound the same. So I do have to go back, because I think you've changed your process in the lamination.
Yeah, I just got a different bag.
Yeah.
And the old one sounded funnier. But then I got bored of how it sounded. So I started overlaying like goats bleeding and fart noises, just immature stuff.
Somebody once told me farts equal funny, and that just stuck with me. You can't go wrong.
No matter how old you are.
Yeah. Well, I do want to talk to you about working with, some of the brands that you work with and stuff like that. And maybe we'll catch some of that in more of the after show. But tell me about, if you're doing a build that is, you're doing a build a month, essentially, with maybe some stuff sprinkled in there, and you're doing this full time, like as your main source of income. So tell me a little bit about your pricing model and how you kind of structure your builds. It's
gotten a lot more complicated since I started making videos about them, because it's like, do I charge by the week? Do I upcharge my materials? There's no way I can keep track of hours. Filming just takes a lot longer. Right. So right now I'm estimating how long it would take to build it if I wasn't filming it. And I do sort of a base by like weekly studio time plus materials with a 50% markup. That'll cover my overusage, my waste, and incidentals, expendables, and then the design time on top of that, which is $100 an hour.
Okay.
That one I do trade my time for.
Right. Yeah. So when you do this, are you, and you say you don't necessarily worry about time, like how many projects do you have in a queue, essentially?
So I actually cut off my commissions. I am pretty much full for this year.
Okay.
I don't know where business is going to be in a year. Honestly, I'd like to quit taking commissions altogether. I crossed 100,000 on YouTube, and all of a sudden I kind of don't need it.
Yeah. Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thanks,
That's
man.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's difficult where as soon as the video sponsor, which I'd like to be more industry partners, but so far I've been working with ad agencies, typically on Silicon Valley startups that are selling something by subscription base, Simply Safe, HelloFresh, that kind of thing, and just doing an ad integration. But as soon as that like threshold crossed, like exceeded what the project is, earning, it felt like I was prioritizing the sponsor and their like ad integration portion and their schedule and their deadlines. And it wasn't coming at a cost too, but I was definitely like having to come up with stuff really quickly to like shove in, because I wasn't willing to do something quickly or wrong or rush it. In order to, meet the sponsor deadline, because the sponsor, I'm a dime a dozen on YouTube, but the person who I'm making this for has to live with it forever. So right. I want that portion to be right. Also, it'll be fun to be able to work on like my own portfolio. I feel like I'm on the cusp of really understanding my like quote unquote style, which is hard to find, but I'd like to really flesh that out.
Yeah. So your portfolio consists mostly of bent lamination and curvature and things like that. Does that fall within your future plans for your design portfolio, or are you looking to do something a little bit different to add into the portfolio? Like, are you going to double down?
Yeah, I am at the point where I really like where I'm headed. I need to find some more efficiency in the process, whether that is putting a CNC in the shop to cut out forms, hiring somebody to do some of the like setup that doesn't make the video anyways. There's a lot of places to outsource, sort of, and free up my time. I definitely want to do more bent stuff, but I'm not like opposed to doing a box. This year I have planned to put out my first video course. It'll be a toolbox. I might put like bent lamb poles on it or something, but it's going to go under my OG Rubo, and I don't know, some like crazy bent thing probably doesn't vibe with that. So I'll probably just do a box. That makes it easy too. Makes it a little more.
Well, I know you're not going to do just a box. Like it's going to be it's going to be a Sawyer Designs box, which is going to
definitely
have a lot of bells and whistles, hidden drawers, maybe.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I've definitely, hidden would be cool. I'll probably focus on like just detail-y stuff. Yeah.
A hidden liquor cabinet, hidden gun cabinet.
There we go. I've done both of those.
Yeah.
The internet hates guns.
Right. Yeah. You're not going to get monetized on that video, right?
Yeah. I don't know. That's just, I'm kind of a people pleaser, and I couldn't believe how many people were up in arms.
Literally. or not up in arms.
Yeah, exactly.
Nerf guns. Maybe you could, do the video for Nerf or something.
Yep. That would be fun. Nerf.
Yeah.
I'm, totally down to discuss this if you happen to be listening.
Nerf, you know what to do.
Yeah. A lot of reach.
Yeah.
Didn't Jimmy do?
Yeah. Yeah. So I had him on. He was talking about, I think like guns and knives and things like that. And he did a guitar, took a guitar and a gun and made him like a fusion type thing. And one of his videos didn't get demonetized, but most of his other videos have got demonetized. It's just, got to keep the community safe.
Yeah, I'm at the point where I rely too heavily on those videos. So I like pushing buttons as much as the next person, but not to the point where I lose the station that I've worked so hard to gain. So I'll probably avoid that until I score a Netflix game.
Right. There you go. So a lot of people that I talk to, just like patrons and other folks that send me messages for the podcast. When we talk about things like going full time, That seems to be an overwhelming majority of the people who listen to a podcast about making and woodworking. And there are people who are heavily invested into this community and doing things. So when did you go full time into this whole process?
Yeah, I mean, people put a lot of like importance on that. I don't know if it's just validation. I'd say whatever works for you, you do you, boo. But yeah, I'm in a different place. Like so I'm from Boise. My wife and I were living there. I was working at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, wearing a penguin suit every day and waiting tables. It was a lot of fun. I miss those days. Yeah.
Working for tips.
It's also, yeah, that's a pretty good place to work for them though. And I loved it. I started building stuff on the side, and my wife finished up school, and her residency put her here in Portland, Oregon. And I just decided now that she was going to be, earning, I would just commit. I could kind of tell that I was on my way out or like way towards moving to woodworking. So I don't know about the content creation side. Like I mean, as soon as you get there, Yeah. Like I know that grind, and it is a hamster wheel, and you just have to keep going. You got to push through the plateaus, because there's going to be plateaus. Mm-hmm. There's always plateaus, and just really like learn from each of the last things and take, the talkers in the comments section with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. But like, if a lot of people are telling you, I don't know, I was super stubborn at the beginning. Like my difference is going to be that it's not going to be me talking, because I don't know how to form a sentence very well anyways. And I certainly don't know how to script anything. Writing to be read that sounds natural. Like John makes it look easy. I can't do that. I look like I'm reading off a screen. Mm-hmm. So
it's definitely an art form.
Yeah.
I used to get in front of the camera, and I would just talk about the thing, right? I would just kind of, because you know what you're talking about, but a lot of the times and even in the podcast, when I listen back to these episodes, I'm like, I said something in 5 sentences I could have said in 1, learning to be more concise. So when I go through the editing process, I mean, it just butcher the hell out of that thing. And so,
yep.
The video that I posted today, that was the first video and we talked a little bit in the pre-show, but that's the first video that I've ever done that I wrote the title and thumbnail and then scripted out after that, and had to constantly refer back to why people clicked on that title and thumbnail, which is something I've never done before. And so, speaking of plateaus, that's the only flat surface I work on is YouTube. It just, making a, you hit a little bit of a stride, and then it just plateaus. It's like, okay, what can I do to make it better?
Yeah. Always looking for that next shakeup. Like I started out, and I am, I don't know how to say that. Like, I like to party.
Yeah. There you go.
I like EDM. Like, I like cutting to music. I loathe editing in general. So having, beat edit loaded into Premiere and just like cutting on the beats.
Yeah.
It made it like an easy way for me to go. I realize that's probably not the market segment that I'm trying to reach. I was trying to branch out into something like more my age, like 30s and like 30 and under. Mm-hmm. But most people watching woodworking are like 40 or older. Right. So I've tried to tone it back a little bit, and that's been a huge thing that has really made a big difference. I was stubborn for a long time, but as soon as I toned it back, all of a sudden it went from, 30,000 average, my last 7 or 250,000 view average. So
that's great. Yeah, I had to pivot because I typically like to build music into mine as well. And so the last two videos I haven't had any music in because I would get the comments like the music is distracting. You know, and you can just tell who's writing that comment. You know, it's just the people who I just want the information. Just cut to the chase, you know, get to the information, which that's totally relevant, right? Like you do need to cut to the chase.
Sure. If it's educational, I could see that.
Yeah.
I think the broader audience and the broader appeal is where you're kind of hanging on the fence next to educational and entertaining. Mm-hmm. I found it interesting. My last video, I did almost zero music. And then I went through and I took screenshots of every comment from all of the video from that one and compared it to all the videos before. And people are just going to bitch. Like the one I had no music, people were like, hey, where's the beats? And then about 50, actually exactly 50% of the comments on all the videos before that were the negative ones stand out, obviously. But there was an equal number of comments saying that they like the music choices. So I think I'm just going to go with some will, some won't. And I will know that those may receive a few comments, but honestly, I think you're barking up the wrong tree if you're trying to please every single person.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, you said it a few minutes ago is, you know, you got to make, if you're launching full time or whatever, in that style, you've got to do what makes you happy. If you're doing video and you hate video editing and music makes you happy, then make videos with music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the evolution of your projects that you did from like your first, and I should have gone back and watched your first upload. You told me not to. So I didn't. I respected that because I didn't want to bring that into this conversation. I want to talk about today. But so tell me about, you know, if you go back and watch that video, what's your initial reaction to your evolution from that time to now?
That my audio has gotten a hell of a lot better. I'm colorblind, and my subjective rather than objective color correction from log footage to Rec 709, and really color balancing all the way around the shop and getting that dynamic range is really improved. When I first started, and I think probably just I didn't know any better, I was blowing out all my highlights, really bringing down that like IRE to the 5 to 90 range, and produces a pretty pro looking image.
Okay. So about the color blindness, does it affect your style, your like what woods are going to work together or anything like that? How do you overcome that challenge?
So tones, I can see tones. When I first got started, I bought these like 16 quarter chunks of walnut they were like out of Michigan. He had them at some trade show in Boise, and I had them resawn, made it into the table, made a base for it, delivered it. And the interior designer was like, wow, that is really red.
Oh,
lady, this is a walnut. What are you talking about? And the homeowner comes in. She goes, wow, that's really red.
Oh, no.
Like, well, I got news for you guys.
Where's my paycheck?
See that. They ended up paying for material. I donated the time to redo the top. Luckily, it was just a tabletop. It didn't take long. Like I tried correcting it with pistachio green, and like I sent in pictures, like, I don't know. I saw green and red. You know, does this look better? They're like, nope. And then I went with black, and that also just looked like poo. So yeah, I ended up redoing it, and like it was a good lesson. I definitely do, if I'm working with walnut especially. I will definitely send some like samples and tones, particularly if I'm working with an interior designer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've worked with a few interior designers, and I mean they're great because a lot of times they hand you the design that you need to do, but then it also you can't be as creative. So there's that trade-off.
Yeah, I hate working with interior designers. I'll be happy if I never have to again.
Yeah.
They love using like stain on walnut and just stupid bullshit off of Pinterest that they saw and want it recreated. And I'm not here for that.
Yeah.
Life's too short to rip off Pinterest designs.
Hey, that's how we all get started though, right? Like, you know, you always get the person who sends you the design and like, and they always crop out the price. And they say, "Hey, can you build this?"
Reverse image search.
Yeah, exactly. They don't know we're smarter than they are. They'll send me a design and like, "Hey, can you make this?" I'm like, "Oh, sure." I said, "But I'm not going to beat the price at X," and I'll send them the link. And they instantly know, like, "Hey, I know you're trying to get a better price, and that's why you're asking if I can build it. Otherwise, you would have bought this project already."
Yeah.
But you're doing more complex things that you can't buy at Home Goods and Hobby Lobby and stuff like that. So I think you're in a safe space. If they know your portfolio, that is.
Yeah, I've worked pretty hard to put myself in a place that doesn't get a lot of tire kickers or they're not looking for somebody to beat a price.
Right.
If somebody does reach out for that, I'm super straightforward in my first email. Like, there are 1,000 people who can do this cheaper than I can.
Mm-hmm. Good, fast, cheap. And the only one that I'm going to do is good.
Yeah. And my caveat is unique. I want to write one of one on the bottom of it and be able to sleep at night knowing that that's not going to be recreated. And it was an original design. Hey,
so on this podcast, I know you've listened to a couple of the episodes, and we play a game on this podcast. And one that I like to do when it's kind of one-on-one is cover a lot of ground, playing a game called Rapid Fire. So I'll basically say something and you just say the first thing that comes to your mind. So
okay, I'm ready.
If you're like me, the first thing that comes to your mind is not usually the first thing that you say. So maybe for you, say the second thing that comes to your mind.
She can't say that on there.
Okay, second question. All right, so it's just a good way for people to get to know you a little bit more, and it's, we can cover a lot of different things. So I've got probably, I don't know, depends on how much we talk about them, but between 5 and 8 of them. So
cool.
First one, process or final product?
Oh, final product.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, the harder the process, the more rewarding the final product for me. I like when the process hurts a lot. In retrospect,
masochistic?
I enjoy it. Maybe just like a little bit.
Well, you do fantastic final product shots. So to me, when somebody does that, a lot of people, you see all of their build process and then you never get to see the final product because they're, sending it off or whatever. But you build that into, because your portfolio is important to you.
It is. I mean, it kind of sucks as a woodworker that everything you put all your time into goes out the door and you never see it again. And people buy what they see. They don't assume you can do anything. So if you want to sell something, and you want to sell something different than what you're making, then you have to make that thing. Typically, I have not had a lot of luck with doing spec pieces. So having a wide breadth of design and showcasing it in a way that really like makes the thing look its best, not sitting in a green tinted fluorescent shop that is cluttered everywhere, surrounded by shavings.
Yeah.
probably doesn't like your eye doesn't go to that first. They're thinking, wow, he's got a really messy shop. So yeah, I think finding that some way to get that across, and you also get to hold on to a little piece of that piece.
Right. Yeah. It's your finished shots are fantastic. You got a great setup for that. Something that I need to build into my workshop. Nice backdrop, so I'm they're not looking at the sawdust shavings. So thanks for calling me out. Appreciate that.
Paper roll, man. They're $100, 10 foot wide, 30 foot long. It makes a world of difference.
Definitely.
I think probably more so. I still crop out my backdrop and Photoshop in, a nice gradient. Learning post has been the biggest game changer for me, because I like my studio space for taking pictures is 8 foot by 10 foot, and it's hard to shoot anything big in there. So figuring out how to correct all of that, barrel warp and stuff, and setting up lights in a small space and having to delete all the stands, all the lights that you can see in frame. And
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Next one. Bell wasn't working. These buttons, you got to press all these crazy buttons. Did you ever watch Angela Johnson? She's like, "Oh, you got to press all these got me pressing all these crazy buttons."
Is she the acrylic
yes, nail? Yeah. She does bonquiqui. She's like, "You got me pressing all these crazy security." Love that. I should have my wife do a voiceover for that. She does a fantastic job at that voiceover. Okay, if you could outsource one thing, and I think you might have answered this already. If you could outsource one thing that you do today, what would it be?
Oh, God, probably the cutting selects and color correction.
Okay. So like on the editing, the video editing side.
Yeah, on the wood side, probably form building, everything set up. Like, I really enjoy a project after it hits that point when like you can see the thing, what it's going to be. Everything leading up to that, I just loathe.
Yeah. Well, they say that the last 10% takes 90% of the effort.
Oh yeah.
And the first 85% of the project is miserable. It's like once it starts to take shape, that's like the sweet spot.
Yep. Especially when you're working out of a small space, like you're constantly like moving stuff around stuff. And it's just like, it irks my OCD in all the wrong ways. Like it really stresses me out.
Yeah. So tell me about your dream shop setup.
Ooh. Big old iron for pretty much everything. Do you see Daryl Pert's shop tour?
No, I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, he's got like the Altendorf, Felder slider.
Oh yeah,
slider like 16-inch joiner planer combo.
You're talking dirty.
I would, yeah, I'd love to have my own bench room to sort of like separate out, have sort of my recording studio bench room, sort of like the dust, no dust side. I think it would be cool to have some sort of gantry system for moving heavy stuff around. I also think it would be really cool to have a overhead gantry for video.
Oh yeah.
Like jib mounted. That would be amazing to get all that stuff off the floor.
Right. With a 42-inch monitor.
Yeah.
so you can see you're out of focus before you actually cut the piece.
Man, what do you shoot on?
I've got the Sony A7. And
which one?
It's not the A7S. A7 III.
Okay, so I came from the A7 III. I recently went up to the A7 IV. The autofocus difference is night and day.
Okay. I got my eyes on Black Magic because I use that for some other stuff that I do. It's not mine, but the 4 has better autofocusing?
Oh, it's incredible. I've got the 4 and the FX30. I shoot multicam.
Okay. Nice.
But yeah, I remember the 3. That's the reason I moved away from it, was the autofocus was so unreliable. I remember just shooting entire intros and it was focused on the back wall and I had like center focus on with eye detect. Yeah. I'm like, I'm right here.
Yeah. I could have drawn a circle around my eyes and it would have still missed it.
I could show a rock how to focus on me right now.
Yeah, I've actually been using the iPhone 13 a lot lately because now the only thing is you don't get the depth of field that makes it visually appealing, to be able to have that nice focus. And the cinematic view is really the reason why I upgraded the iPhone. But I don't ever use the cinematic mode because it's so fake, and it might even crop out part of your face as part of the background. With a beard like this. It doesn't know where to focus. Do I focus on the beard? Do I not?
Yeah, I think there's like 2 trains of thought there. And what I saw, my buddy Nelson, who's helped me a ton, he runs all of the content production for sort of a Peloton for CrossFit. And he got me into like the video side and away from a phone. I think there is a fair like chunk of our market segment that we're trying to present to our audience that is what I like to call the like process pornographer. Like they like to see how it goes together and they want to see it, tack sharp. And just it seemed like the lowest hanging fruit in our like sector of, woodworker, maker. A lot of people shoot on their phones. Nothing wrong with that. That's great if it's working for you. I did it for a long time. I really enjoy watching stuff that is produced in 10-bit 422 at 250 megabits per second. And, you can really, it just feels like you can reach out and touch it.
Yeah, definitely. There's, you're balanced the infotainment spectrum pretty well. And that's something and I'm going to have Drew Witt on. He's really good at lighting his space. And I've tried to incorporate, I tried in this last video. So to just incorporate a little bit of that into my videos, just because, if you've seen one workshop, you've seen a dozen workshops, there's variability, but I don't know. To me, it's just something, it feels cinematic a little bit where you're learning something, but you're not like, you don't feel like you're learning something. I don't know.
Yeah. He does all the talking head stuff, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely easier to set up a good spot. It's I shoot with all video lights in the shop, but it's hard to like move around tool to tool and like set up each one
and not have a shadow like that or something. Yeah.
For all of the like talking head stuff, totally. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, next one. So you talked about music, like in your videos. What's your favorite music to play when the cameras aren't on? Like, just
I don't know. It kind of depends on where you hit me on my Adderall curve. Psytrance, tech house, all EDM. Okay. I'm a little raver at heart.
There you go. And yet I have not seen one glow light in your shop.
I do have underglow RGB strips on my Roubo.
That thing has pretty much everything.
That really pissed off people when I put underglow on the dresser, like all that time.
Yeah.
He's like, that looks tacky. I'm like, go yourself. Not your bedroom, not your problem.
Yeah. So, before we get to the next one. So you have this, not your fingers, not your problem.
Yeah.
Because the safety police, and I didn't go back in your comments. I was more binging your stuff just on the TV. So I wasn't reading through the comments, but I take it early on you were getting a lot of flack for the way you use a table saw and things.
More so a joiner. Okay. Yeah. I just hated that it like took over the whole comment section. And it's gotten like misconstrued. People, those who get it, like understand it. Some people think I'm saying like, don't be safe. What I'm saying is if you know less than me, don't tell me how to use my tool, because as you learn more, I think the ability of a machine also goes up. Mm-hmm. So with thorough and comprehensive understanding, what the machine can do safely also goes up. I realize that I like just got tired of, I quit pushing that because I got tired of explaining it. Like, I'm not telling people to not be safe. I wouldn't do anything that puts my fingers in harm's way. But if somebody who is learning tries to replicate what I'm doing, I can do something safely because I know where pressure needs to be and I know where my hands need to be in order to make that a safe thing. If somebody tries to replicate that doesn't know it, then I'm coming around to more so just tired of arguing with people.
Well, and if you cut off your fingers, you wouldn't be able to do the gesture you just did a second ago.
That also like occurred to me at one point. Somebody's like, well, I'm just, I don't want to see that happen. And I was like, honestly, like that's a lot of just like to eat if I have to.
Yeah,
like,
if it actually does happen.
Hey, you remember that thing that I did about that?
That's when you rebrand.
Yeah.
Change your last name and rebrand.
Man, I got the best email from this guy the other day. He was like, your website, like Sawyer Furniture, world-class challenges, first-class photography, but your website is neither modern nor crafted. Reminds me of, it says more like Fukushima, Classroom of Fukushima 2011.
Oh, wow. Let me guess, he was selling website design.
Neither modern nor crafted. Are your fingers the problem? And
wow.
I was like, damn, that is some like compelling copy. So he's rebuilding my website.
Yeah. Called it.
Yep.
Yeah, I get those a lot. Hey, I've been following you for a long time, and I really think we can do a lot with your SEO or whatever. And I'm like, you don't follow anybody. Like, I go to their account or whatever. I'm like, you follow 100 people and I'm not one of them.
Yeah. You can spot the like canned responses. I ignore those too. But this guy was just like, the title, like I am so envious of people who can word well, because I don't. And
ChatGPT,
like good, good copy is just there. There's nothing like it. His title for the thing was fan letter of open concern. I was like, okay,
I'm intrigued.
That's like positive, but like there's a little bit of negative. Like, oh, what's he concerned about? I told him, I was like, you can rebuild my website, but also can you write my video titles? Because this was so compelling. Yeah. I delete 5 SEO offers a day. It was a thing of beauty.
That's awesome. Yeah, he could definitely, I think you should build that into the pricing model for sure. Hey, go back and here's my 5 most underperforming videos. Rewrite the title.
Yeah, he's a wood nerd. Like I'm so envious of those kind of people.
That's awesome.
Like, I went to school for science. Yeah. Science text is the most boring stuff to read.
Yeah. Oh, I did the long route to school. I did like 7 years of college and I did not get a doctorate degree.
Hey, I'm right there with you.
I graduated when we had a 6-month-old. I was like, okay, it's time. I think I need to graduate before she does.
Yeah, I went into college thinking I'd be a doctor, and I decided to marry one instead.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was easier, but
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
All right, just let's do one more. Let me pick a good one here. What is the most useless tool in your shop?
Man, that's a good question. The thing that I use.
Hopefully it's not a sponsor. Say the second thing that's near mine, because the first one's probably sponsored.
I have some things that are pretty redundant. So I wouldn't say they're necessary useless, but like the Rotex was number one in my shop until I got the ETSEC. And now the Rotex doesn't get used that much, but wouldn't say it's useless. So probably I would say maybe my joinery bench. I don't like it. Looks nice. It's not deep enough to cut dovetails on a full case depth. It holds a lot of tools, but the surface really just collects all of the accoutrement that piles up during the course of a project.
Any flat surface.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one tool that I am jealous of, and I think I mentioned it maybe in a comment or something, but is the Panto router. Like that thing looks.
That would be.
It's been on my list for about a year now, and you know I just need to pull the trigger. Do you make your own templates for him on the 3D printer, or what's your method for that?
I don't have a 3D printer yet, so I think we were going to talk about brands a little bit. Panto router has to be my longest running and like closest relationship I have with any tool manufacturer. They're awesome, and I would like to do some of my own templates. I actually spoke with Shaper. They're sending out a unit, which I think will be really useful in the shop, and making some templates for the Panto router.
Nice.
Yeah, Panto router just opens up like a lot of doors for just weird stuff. Also, really not weird stuff, but stuff that just takes a long time doing it by hand, mortise and tenons, and especially doing like 1,000 of them, or if you have to batch a bunch of stuff out, making face frames or something. I like that it locks down. It's not as fatiguing as Domino. I think Domino has its place. I use both of them on everything, in different places in different ways.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I do want to kind of ask a few more questions when we go to the after show on that.
Perfect.
But so any last words here before we end the main segment? I mean, people can follow you. You could just look up Sawyer Design. I'll put the link in the show notes and to both your YouTube and your Instagram. But primarily, if you want to see the process, I would say your YouTube. And if you want to see the final shots, if you're all about the final shots, your portfolio on Instagram, it's fantastic. In fact, it was so intimidating that I think I come across your page a long time ago and looked at it and went, out of my league. So I didn't follow you back then. It wasn't until I looked at your YouTube and I was like, holy crap. Like that's what's going on here. So
yeah, I'm kind of going for that like serious furniture, but not so serious maker vibe, and I'm trying to hit that. I would say definitely hit YouTube first. That's where I'm putting a lot of my attention because it's paying my rent. I haven't been putting so much towards Instagram, but that's kind of where I'm putting all my glory shots. Also check out probably by the time you publish this, I might have my new site up, sawyerdesign.io, and you can sign up for my email list where I'll shoot out absolutely no junk, but I'll let you know when I have new stuff available. I just worked with a engineer. We've got my first set of plans just about ready to go. It's my bent Rubo workbench. It ended up at 67 pages with 1-to-1 templates.
Holy cow.
I don't know at what point it becomes a book, but
I think
we're
you might be
close.
onto something.
And then video course, working on getting some simpler plans together as well. I got t-shirts over there.
If you want a t-shirt that says "Not your fingers, not your problem," head over to SawyerDesigns.io.
Yep. If you Sawyer Design singular,
thank you.
That's a
common miss.
It is. I was talking to Cam at Blacktail Studio, and he was like, "Yeah, if I had a dime for every time somebody said Blacktail Studios, just one,
just one studio."
I was like, "Man, I vibe with that." Offensive T-shirts. If you are offended by that, don't put it in the comments. Like, I get it. I understand. I'm stopping. Just save it.
Well, awesome. Thank you to Surf Prep for sponsoring today's episode. If you want to check them out, head over to surfprepsanding.com. I'll leave a link in the description below. Enter code MakerLounge at checkout for 10% off your order. And thank you to the patrons. We've got a number of patrons. I like to shout out the Rockstar patrons, which are top tier patrons. We've got Jimmy McAnally, Artigiano, Serio. We've got Victor with Wimm Design, Calvary Customs LLC, Cleancut Woodworking, Bailey Thompson, David Garcia, Broken Lead Woodworks, and Stark's Lagoon. So thank you to those top tier patrons. We've only got a number of top tier patrons because we don't want the outro to be, 40 names long. So if you want to be one of those top tier patrons that gets shouted out at the end of the episode, head over to patreon.com/Maker Lounge Podcast. Thanks so much for being here, Nick. And we will catch you in the after show.
Dude, this has been a blast. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.